Good afternoon, class. This is Dr. Deepthi Shanker today, who will be taking a session on East African diasporas. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. You are audible.
Then, yeah, Rohit, Kangat.
Yes, ma'am. You are audible.
Yeah. Kunal, and I see other names. Yeah. Welcome to the class. So today's session will be on East African diasporas. So students, basically in this session, we have two objectives. We try to trace the historical background of East African diaspora and try to understand these two objectives and not go beyond it. If any questions or discussions beyond these two objectives, we'll try to take up in the later classes. But this is a small unit, which is basically trying to make us understand about, to have gives a detailed understanding of the historical background of East African diasporas and the way currently these countries are engaging with the diaspora at present. So now, yeah, so fine. Am I audible now?
Yeah, ma'am, audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So these are the two objectives, students. We'll try to trace the historical background of East African diasporas and to currently engage and currently understand the current engagement of diaspora in East Africa. So first, let's try to understand what does this East Africa comprise of. The eastern part of Africa basically comprises of two traditionally recognized regions. The first is main East African region, which is made up of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, and few other countries also. And the second part of Eastern Africa that is largely called as Horn of Africa. This is made of 4 countries, namely Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. So this constitutes the Eastern Africa. So let us try to locate these countries in the map for us to get a broader view of it. See, we are studying these countries. We should know where they are situated, where exactly they are located. So this is a larger map of Africa. Okay. And see, today's focus will be on this purple colored countries, that is Eastern African countries. So we have Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and other countries. So again, once again, we talked about 2 parts. One is Horn of Africa. This part is Horn of Africa. And the later part is a larger Eastern Africa, which comprises of other regions. The Horn of Africa is actually, the name is got because it is, the land formation is shaped like a horn, like kind of thing. Can you see a horn kind of thing here? Is a horn visible for all of you? Horn kind
Yes,
of formation,
visible.
land formation? Yeah, that is why it is called as Horn of Africa. So let us try to have a closer look of these Horn of Africa, or closer look of this Eastern Africa, so that we can see the Horn of Africa very clearly. This is a closer look of Eastern African map. So this is what we are trying to focus on. So this part is Horn of Africa, which has 4 countries: Somalia, Djibouti, Ethiopia, and Eritrea, which comprises the Horn of Africa. And the larger East African countries, namely Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and other countries. So this actually is how the Eastern Africa is namely roughly called as and divided, and we shall be focusing on these countries. For you to get more familiarity with these countries, I just pulled up this table so that you'll get familiar with their countries and national capitals. So we have Kenya here with its capital Nairobi, and Tanzania with its capital. See, the Dar es Salaam is the first capital of Tanzania. So, but now the current capital is Dodoma, but this map doesn't reflect. So the current capital is Dodoma. That is Kenya, Tanzania, and we have Uganda here with the capital Kampala. So these three countries forms the main East African region. So let's now go to the Horn of Africa, which is shaped like a horn, the land formation, which is horn-like shape. We have 4 countries there, which include Eritrea, Somalia, Eritrea with the capital Asmara, and we have Somalia with the capital Mogadishu, and we have this huge land region, Ethiopia, with the capital Addis Abbas, and Djibouti with the capital city of Djibouti city. So this is for you to be much more familiar with the regions and the capital city. Okay. So basically now we are, let's try to have a brief introduction of East Africa before we go into in detail about these countries and how they're handling the diaspora. So about 455 million people live in East Africa, and nearly 70% of them live in East Africa. And East Africa is multi-ethnic, multicultural, multilingual, and multi-religious. The region is populated by 160 different ethnic groups. In fact, the country is not just politically divided, it is religiously divided, culturally divided, lingually divided, and ethnically divided. And Eastern African people also use other European languages because, historically they were colonized by European powers at one time or the other. English is used by people in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, and Zimbabwe, as they were controlled by the British Empire. And Christianity and Islam are the 2 most prevalent religions which are prevailing in East Africa. Islam is dominant religion in Horn of Africa. See, in most of the Horn of Africa countries, Islam is more prominent. But in other part of the Eastern Africa, in countries like Tanzania, Kenya and all, Christianity is more dominant religion in the rest of the East Africa. And many people in this sub-region also practice traditional of African religions. For instance, there are more, if you notice, there are more than 160 different ethnic tribal groups living here. And each of these ethnic groups have their own tribal religions. So some of them are also practicing this tribal African religion even today. So each of these countries in this African region, Eastern African region, have their own deep-rooted political history and culture. They have their own ethnicity, political history, and culture. And so they also have their own reasons and the driving factor for people's migration. Each country has their own reason as to why people left. Historically, the reasons for out-migration are different for each of these countries. And even now, the reasons why people are moving out of this country is different. So we'll try to explore that shortly now. And likewise, each of these countries have their own ways of diaspora management. The way each of these countries are managing their diaspora is different. It's not same. It's not a uniform pattern. So that's what makes East African countries interesting. The way each of this diaspora is dealing with these countries also is different. Likewise, the way these countries are managing the diaspora also is different, which we'll explore in next few minutes. So let's try to understand what was East Africa in the pre-colonial period and now in the modern times before we start off with each of the individual countries. So in the pre-colonial times, the political boundaries did not exist. Maybe most of these, the entire Eastern Africa lived like one common geographical area with less of political boundaries, and there probably did not exist so many countries. But now we have so many divisions, politically divided, and there's so many different countries. The Horn of Africa, and there's also a main Eastern African region. And earlier, the Eastern Africa was very interactive. They were more trade welcoming, and there were a lot of trade happening between East Africa and the west part of the world. So that's what the sources say. And sources also revealed that there was evidence of free flow of goods and people. Besides, they had strong linkages to their own tribal and ancient culture. But in the modern times, so we can recollect the number of times we hear, and when we hear the news about these East African countries, especially about Ethiopia and Somalia, it's all about hunger, famine, terrorism, genocide. So in the modern times, the East African region is facing a lot of challenges associated with low human and economic development. There are violent conflicts, political oppressions, and persecution, which have led to the migration of the people. There are several challenges associated with poverty and unemployment and poor healthcare system. This is what the Eastern African region in the modern times, mostly in the news for the wrong reasons. However, the history of the East African diasporas is largely the result of the three main factors. That is the migration of ethnic group called Zulu. Zulu is a very well-known, prominent ethnic group. And the migration of this tribe actually has created a huge diaspora elsewhere in the world. And the slave trade, which is a story of the rest of the African countries also, which has resulted in a huge diaspora. And the climate changes and wars which forced ethnic groups to abandon their regions and move out to different countries, which also have contributed in creating diaspora in different parts of the world. So these are the three main reasons for which actually explain the history of the East African diaspora. So in this session, it will be difficult for us to actually go into in detail about all these countries which exist in which are there in East African region. So we just try to cover these main prominent East African countries. We'll be discussing about Kenyan diaspora, Tanzanian diaspora, Ethiopian diaspora, and Sudanese diaspora. So if you notice, Kenya, Tanzania, and Sudanese form the main East African region. And Ethiopia is one country which we have picked up from the Horn of Africa. So we try to actually do justice to both the parts of the East African region. So these are the four countries which we'll be discussing in the next few minutes. So shall we start with the first country? Are you all with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
fine. Yeah, thank you. So we start with Kenyan diaspora. So let's look at the Kenyan map. So Kenya is one of the countries that supplies large number of out-migrants. It's estimated that about 3 million Kenyans are living abroad, and the number is continuously rising. So this is a map of Kenya. This yellow part, what you see is a map of Kenya, which you can locate in the eastern. And if you want to have a closer look of the Kenyan map, you can see the map just below it. So it is surrounded by Indian Ocean and countries such as Somalia, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Uganda, Tanzania, etc. Right? So repeatedly, I'm showing the map just to make you feel, to be aware about where it is geographically located, because most of the time when you're talking about migration and diaspora, the neighboring countries become very important, very relevant. That's the reason why I'm repeatedly showing the maps, so that you can place it, you can locate it comfortably in the map. So this is about Kenya geographically, and also with its neighbor around it. So there are several reasons for the people to migrate from Kenya. The most prominent reasons are the low per capita income growth and the rising income inequality. So declining living standards and unemployment have also been the causes for people to migrate. In addition to it, the forces of globalization, higher education, and skill development opportunities have been a pull factors which have motivated and pushed Kenya to move out of their region, Kenyans to move out of the regions and join elsewhere in the globe. So in the recent times, the business opportunities in neighboring countries have also encouraged many Kenyans to migrate from the country. So you'll see later that when I show the statistics, a lot of people have now migrated to the neighboring countries It's not that they have moved to UK or USA, typically where people aspire to go, but they have moved to several neighboring countries because of the business opportunities which have showed up in the African neighboring countries. So this is a region-wise distribution of Kenyan diasporas. So it is spread across the different continents, that is Asia, Europe, America, Australia, and other countries. So if we look at it in the 1960s, in Africa and African countries alone, there were 54,000 odd people who were living as diasporas. But by 2000, it just shot up to 5,38,000 and odd. Yeah, and so it has been progressively increasing. It's been increasing gradually from 1960s to 2000. But however, if you notice that in Europe, in 1960s, there were only 788 diaspora, and there was it shot up to 30,000 and odd in 1970s, and also in 1980, although it slightly reduced. But once again, by 2000, it is gradually reduced. There's an interesting reason as to why it reduced, why the diaspora number reduced by the time. And likewise, you can see that the differences in the way the number of people moved, and there was a drastic change in each of these years. So by and region-wise distribution, by and large, people who moved out of Kenya, like it was around 59,275 in 1960s, and it shot up to almost 5,40,202 by 2000. This itself is very clearly indicates that there have been continuous increase in the number of people who have been moving away from Kenyan region. And if you notice here, you can see large number of people in Africa itself. So this will raise another interesting question as to which countries of Africa are they actually moving it. So this table shows the diasporan population, diasporan Kenyan population, which are spread across Africa, within the African countries. So the most favored region for them is Uganda, followed by Tanzania, Sudan, Somalia, Ethiopia, Rwanda, etc. And most of these first four countries, these are all Uganda, Tanzania, and Sudan are all neighboring countries of Kenya. And the political boundaries of these countries are closely interlinked. And there are a few instances where the Kenyans have also moved to other parts of Africa. Other parts of Africa, that is Ghana, that is Nigeria, and Burundi, etc. So here also we see that large number, 28,000 in 1960s, by 2000, it shot up several times ahead. So it's almost close to 3,51,000 and 83,000. So this is just a rough picture of how the Kenyan diaspora has increased multiple folds within the African countries, and most of them are neighboring countries. So now let's look at the Kenyan immigration and diasporas in different phases. So the first phase of Kenyan immigration can be traced back to the 1950s and 60s. And this was a period when people largely migrated to acquire skills and knowledge. And the second wave, that is 1970s and 80s, got a trigger from the decline in the economy, and people emigrated to European countries. And many Kenyans migrated to United Kingdom, Germany, and other countries. And the third wave is 1990s and 2000 is largely associated with the movement of immigrants within the African continent for the better opportunities. So the situation of employment and poor economic conditions are some of the major factors. So the third wave, most of the Kenyans moved to neighboring countries of Africa itself for the better business opportunities and to seek employment and to escape from the conditions of their own countries. And the fourth wave is of the most recent origin. Here in this phase, the highly skilled semi-skilled, and the professionals are migrating to both the developed and the developing countries. So how is Kenyan government engaging the Kenyan diaspora? So in the recent years, the policymakers have taken many initiatives to engage the diaspora. In 2007, the government established an international jobs and diaspora office in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to deal with all the diaspora matters. It also initiated a program called Kenya Vision 2030, where diaspora engagement is one of the flagship projects. Kenyan government has provided dual citizenship and voting rights as a new rights. In 2011, the World Bank also granted large sum of money to support the government efforts. So this was in nutshell about the Kenyan migration and diaspora, history of Kenyan migration and diaspora, and also the way the Kenyan government is engaging the diaspora. So this particular reference could be useful to you. Please try to go through it. It is available in the internet. The spotlight on the young and the skilled, exploring the potential contribution of Kenya's diaspora in the South. So the tables which I showed you were also picked up from this. This was a reference used. So try to go through it. So it could be useful for you, for those who are interested more about Kenya. It's a research report. Further, even this reference could be of interest. It's a very short report published by International Organization of Migration, which tells about the Kenyan experience and the diaspora experience, which links the immigrant communities for more development, inventory of institutional capacities and practices. Especially those who are interested to know more about Kenya, you can try to go through it. So this was a very brief note on Kenya. See, I have a video about this Kenya, which I will, the way how the diaspora are investing in Kenya, I'll try to show it at the end of the session, because we have other 3 countries to cover up. So we'll just finish them and then come back to this Kenya and try to see the video. So can we go to the next country?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Thank you. So now let's move to this Tanzanian diaspora. See, at least we should be able to remember the names of these countries. That's the reason why I'm frequently using these names of the countries, capitals, and the map. So this is the map of Tanzania. So we have Dodoma as the capital of Tanzania, and it is surrounded by Kenya, Uganda, Congo, Zambia, Malawi, etc. Okay, so Tanzania also is very interesting. It has its own interesting features, and it is distinct in many ways and stands apart when compared to other East African countries. For instance, the reasons for out-migration in Kenya is different when you compare other East African countries. The country's out-migration can be traced back to the 18th and the 19th centuries. From slavery to colonialism, Tanzanians were forced to immigrate from the country. In the recent global perspective, the issue of unemployment and poverty are also the key reasons for their out-migration. And the driving factors for the out-migration here for Tanzania particularly are not single. There are multiple factors. What are those multiple factors for the Tanzanian out-migration? Historically, during the 18th and 19th centuries, a large number of people were sold into slavery. And these slaves were taken to serve in the Middle East, Europe, and America. Especially these 2 regions, Bagomaya and Zanzibar, became well known as the slave markets and the shipping ports. I'll show these 2 regions in the map shortly. And so this in the earlier phase during the slave trade, the reasons for out-migration was largely the slave trade. The slaves were taken into these countries, and over a period of time, these migrated slaves became a part of a diaspora. Later, during the colonial period, many people migrated to European industrial regions as a cheap labor or forced labor. So during the colonial period, those countries who colonized them, especially the France and Europe, exported these Tanzanians in a form of cheap labor or a forced labor. That's how the out-migration from Tanzania took place. But however, the major shift in the movement of the people took place after the country gained independence from the colonial rule in 1961. So after independence, it was not force, but rather a push and a pull factors that affected the movement of people. In addition to it, the open economy provided the opportunity to look for overseas employment for all the Tanzanians, and especially those who are actually eligible or who had the skills. So the demand for unskilled, semi-skilled, and skilled workers encouraged many people to emigrate. And as a result, a lot of people moved out of Tanzania. And improved and advanced communication system, modern technology also favored for those who are interested to leave the country. So all these reasons became the multiple factors for the outmigration of Tanzania. I was referring to Zanzibar in the earlier slide. See, Zanzibar is an island state within the Indian Ocean in Eastern Africa. And interestingly, the Zanzibar population are known to originate from all the corners of the world. And they are also, and the diaspora of this country is found across. They are well known. They're found in many parts of the world. So interestingly, this Zanzibar is a part of Tanzania, but it has its own semi-autonomous independence with its own capital. I'll show it in the map shortly. What is interesting about this Zanzibar people is that their culture is, migration has become a part of the culture. So traveling and migration is a part of the culture. So, so accordingly, you find a lot of Zanzibarians who are in different parts of the world, and they associate themselves with their own country and also with Tanzania. Many of the Zanzibar people have migrated to Tanzania, and this Zanzibarian diaspora maintains close connections with not just Tanzania, but also with their own country, with their own island, and have supported their communities in development initiatives. See, if you look at this map, this is Zanzibar we're talking about. See, this is Tanzania, okay? And here in the Indian Ocean, there are a lot of small islands. Among them, there are two large islands, that is Pemba Island and Zanzibar Island, which together form Zanzibar. And Zanzibar town is the capital of Zanzibar. So this is actually technically a part of the Tanzania, but however, Zanzibar retains its own independence. They're semi-autonomous, and semi-autonomous, and it's a self-governing state. Tourism industry is very famous here. In fact, the most well-known destination in Tanzania is tourist destination in Tanzania is Zanzibar, and also Zanzibar is known for its spice industry. So, because of various reasons for economy, it has its own self-autonomous state and has its own governing council with its own capital. But it's also it is considered to be a part of Tanzania. So, this Zanzibar was well known earlier as an shipping port, as a center for slave trade, which also contributes a lot for history of Tanzanian migration and Tanzanian diaspora. And the Zanzibarian diaspora maintain their close relations with both Tanzania and their own small island home state. So this was in a brief about Tanzanian migration and history of diaspora. So you can go through this very interesting thesis, PhD thesis. Understand it's the perceived and the actual effects of remittances on poverty, education, and development in Tanzania. It's a case study of Leicester-based Tanzanian diaspora, which is submitted to University of Derby, this is available in internet. You can go through it. But only thing is that this she talks about the author talks about the diaspora of UK, Tanzanian diaspora based in UK. So it may be limited to the perspective of UK, but however, it gives some diaspora perspective which could be of interest to anyone who's interested in more about Tanzania. I'm sure they would also made a mention of Zanzibar Island and the Zanzibarian diaspora also in this thesis. So now let's discuss about Ethiopian diaspora. So before I start about diaspora, let me ask you one question. What is the last time you heard about Ethiopian diaspora or Ethiopian country in the news? What is the last, when is that you heard about it? Anything you heard about it, Ethiopia? Anyone would like to respond?
Hmm.
Uh,
Ma'am,
there
I
may
think
have,
few months back,
Yes. What did you hear about Ethiopia?
I think, ma'am, they got any award from our president, I think.
Okay, fine. Any other news as to what is happening in Ethiopia, or generally what is the news you get to hear about Ethiopian or any other East African nations? That is a very
there
good.
may have been some kind of ethnic conflicts because of which a war, a
And ma'am,
civil war.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Thanks for the.
recently,
What is
ma'am,
your name?
recently, Shanker also visited the Tanzania.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. Exactly. True.
Ethiopian country is civil war.
Exactly. Yes, yes. Was it Kangat and who
It's
spoke about?
Shrestha. It's
Yeah,
Shrestha.
Shrestha. Yes, Shrestha. And then yes, and the last one who spoke about now the civil war. Who was that?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah. What is your name? Who spoke about civil war now?
Kunal.
Yeah,
One
Kunal.
second.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. Both of you are right. And yes, and the other students who made a mention of about the recent news. Thank you for their inputs. Yes, basically, civil war and the ethnic conflict is what actually is actually has what is we get to hear a lot about Ethiopian diaspora. Why I say this is, for instance, so yeah, let's look at the map of Ethiopia. See, Ethiopia is a landlocked country. We have Sudan, South Sudan, Kenya, Uganda, Somalia, and Djibouti as its neighbors. And the capital city of Ethiopia is Addis Ababa. It's just right in the center. Yeah. So what is a story of Ethiopian diaspora and migration? The rise in conflict in Ethiopia has forced many people to migrate. Even historically and as also now, most of the times the reasons why people are migrating from Ethiopia is because of conflict. And because of that, Ethiopian diaspora is largely made up of conflict-generated diaspora. That's what the term is given by the scholars who study diaspora, that they are largely a result of the conflict which has been generated in the region.
Excuse me, ma'am. May I interrupt you?
Yes. Yes,
There is just one thing that I wanted you to acknowledge. There is this very good film, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, and this film was a very good film it was there on Netflix, and it was around a boy from Tanzania, and that was something to do with famine and how there are one can find, and it's about more about the film, but it has to do with the kind of poverty that there is there in Ethiopia, and yet at the possibility of so much that can happen with the human efforts and some kind of uh, I think endeavor on the part of the administration as well.
Yeah. Yes, Shrestha, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Shrestha. That's what, most of the times when you hear about this, especially these East African countries, Somalia, Ethiopia, and other countries, Uganda and all, we hear about famine, hunger, conflict, conflict-ridden migration, most of the things. What was the name of the movie? You recollect the name of the movie?
The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind.
Okay. Yes, yes. Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. Yes. Many such movies are there. Yeah, that was right in a way. It's an actual real picture of what's happening in Ethiopia. And coming back to our point, so this diaspora is also made up of conflict generated. And here in this context, what we're trying to say is, where Tanzanians diaspora is largely due to slavery and bonded labor, which are exported to European countries. Ethiopian diaspora is because of the conflict that takes place, largely ethnic conflict that takes place in the region. It's estimated that around 251,000 Ethiopian migrants and their children live in the United States. And these immigrants include both first and the second generation migrants. And Ethiopian migration to the United States date back to the 1960s and the 70s. What happened in the 1960s and 70s? A lot of civil war, ethnic conflict, red terror. For instance, in the scholarly works of Ethiopian diaspora argue that the out-migration from Ethiopia began with the outbreak of the Ethiopian Revolution in the 1974. The revolution happened and a lot of people moved to the United States. And that was the first wave of out-migration, where a lot of people moved to the United States that took place in Haley's regime in 1970s. And this was followed by the leftist operation, also known as Red Terror. This is a very well-known episode in the world, Red Terror in Ethiopia in the late 1970s. Even during this, it is a civil war that happened, and a lot of people moved. And what did United States do? United States actually sheltered a lot of people as refugees. And the 1980s refugee crisis pushed many people to take shelter. And eventually, they become a part of the diaspora. Many Ethiopians become a part of diaspora in the United States and other countries. And that was a history of the Ethiopian migration and diaspora historically, which is largely because of the conflict, that ethnic conflict that is taking place in the region. But in the recent times, the out-migration is a result of several factors that includes globalization, poverty, income disparity, overseas employment opportunities, etc. Because of these reasons, Ethiopians are moving out from their own region to elsewhere in the world. So according to the US Census, Ethiopian migrant population has increased from 7,516,000 in 1980s to almost 69,531 in 2000s. And many Ethiopians are also living in Middle East, Netherlands, and North America. About 2.5 million of them are found in Europe. And as per the Dutch Central Agency, there are 1,637 Ethiopians in Netherlands. How is Ethiopian diaspora engaging with their countries, and how is Ethiopian government doing to actually engage its diaspora? So diaspora contribution is not just limited to sending remittances in this Ethiopia. They are contributing to promote skills and knowledge in their home country. They're involved in creating awareness about the health education for girls. And they're also providing business and networking opportunities for people. Diaspora is working and contributing to culture and infrastructure development, etc. And in terms of what the Ethiopian government is doing, the initiatives taken by Ethiopian government for diaspora engagement, there is a Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Capacity Building, which are the key institutions involved at the national level and are responsible for diaspora engagement. And in addition, there's a Ministry of Employment Services Protection Directorate and Social Affairs, who are also responsible for assisting Ethiopian migrants who are working abroad. Ethiopian investment agencies and Development Bank of Ethiopia are also involved in diaspora engagement. Further, there are several measures taken by Ethiopian government. It's a yellow card, which is the original Ethiopian card. It provides a right to the Ethiopian diaspora, but it doesn't offer dual citizenship. The government also has taken initiatives to promote international remittance services. The diaspora bond, which is a government debt security. And these bonds are tax-free and it can be availed from the local banks in local currencies. The transfer of knowledge and skill programs are also happening very effectively, and it is implemented by International Organization of Migration and supported and funded by United Nations Development Program. So the Ethiopian government is getting assistance from international agencies to actually handle and manage its diaspora. So this was in a nutshell about Ethiopian diaspora, which is a largely an conflict-generated diaspora. And if anybody is further interested in this, can go and try to look at this reference, Ethiopian diaspora and homeland conflict. And somebody is interested in this Red Terror, what happened in this late 1980s, the Ethiopian Red Terror, even now it is still an unknown factor. So number of people who are killed in this Ethiopian Red Terror is not been actually understood. It is the news has never been out, but something which was alarming to the entire world. And this is a short report. The last third reference is a short report which tells about the diaspora engagement in Ethiopia finding its footing. So this completes our discussions on diaspora. But students, please keep in mind, the reason why I am moving fast is that, this session cannot go in detail about all these countries. It is just to give you some kind of insight so that you will further go and try to explore. And if you are interested in any one of these countries, you can take it up. This is a brief session for you to give insight about the migration and diaspora of these countries. So can we move to the last country, Sudan, before we open up to the discussions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So please beware of it. It's impossible to talk in detail about the rich history of migration and diaspora, which is rooted in these countries in just 45 minutes talk. So this is broadly to give an insights so that you will be interested to read more about it. So Sudanese, now tell me, where does this Sudanese fall? Is it a part of Horn of Africa region, or is it in the main East African region? So the main East African region has only 4 countries. The Horn of African region has only 4 countries, that is Ethiopia, Somalia, Djibouti, and Eritrea. So this is not from the Horn of Africa. But Ethiopia is a part of Horn of Africa. Okay, so in our discussions, we have 4 countries. So we have 4 countries. Kenya is a main eastern part of Africa, is a main part of the Eastern African region. Tanzania also falls under the same region. Even Sudan also falls under the main East African region. We have taken 1 country from Horn of Africa, that was Ethiopia, which is completed. So once again, we go back to the main part of East African region. So Sudan, the capital of Sudan is Khartoum. It is surrounded by Egypt, Libya, Chad, Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Saudi Arabia as its neighboring countries. And so what is interesting about Sudan's migration is that it has its interesting features. For instance, the outmigration of Sudan can be traced back to the 1960s, and Sudanese migrants have migrated as either permanent, circular, or temporary migrants. There are all kinds of migration happening from Sudan. The permanent migration is largely composed of professionals, and majority of whom have migrated to developing countries. And the Gulf countries appear to the most favored destination for circular migration as per the UNDP's 2020 report. It's estimated that about 4 to 5 million Sudanese are living abroad. So the migration waves from the Sudan. The prominent factors for outmigration are the demand from the Gulf countries and the unemployment in the Sudan. If you recollect the map of Sudan, you can see that the Gulf countries are very close by. They are the neighboring countries. So no wonder why it was easier for the Sudanese people to migrate to the Gulf countries. And most interesting is that the Gulf countries are known for this circular migration. People who frequently travel for employment purpose and then come back. They are not going there to settle themselves permanently, but they keep going. They keep migrating between the host and home country, which forms a circular kind of migration among the Sudanese. So the first wave of migration started around 1973, and according to the UNDP 2020 report, that is during 1973 and 78, there were around 23,000 Sudanese people in the Gulf countries. And the second wave occurred during 1980s when there was massive unemployment in the country, which people left, and probably people also took up circular migration during that period. And frequent conflicts, political instability, and famine also pushed many people to emigrate to other countries. Besides the above reasons, it was also because of political instability and conflicts and frequent famine that pushed many people to leave their homeland and create a home for themselves in different regions of the world. So this is a table which shows about the migrating countries of Sudanese diaspora. So the first set of countries, that is Netherlands, Germany, United Kingdom, Canada, this is where the permanent migration happened by the Sudanese population, and where you can find the Sudanese diaspora in these countries. And the Sudanese people also migrated to these Gulf countries. That's where the temporary migration, which became a part of the, which constituted the temporary or circular migration. And in the recent times, the Sudanese people are living in Egypt, Kenya, and other African countries, also East African countries, especially the neighboring countries. And as per UNDP Human Development Report, emigration rate from Sudan was 1.7% in 2000 and 2002. And the top countries of Sudanese destination includes South Sudan. It's very close to Sudan. So earlier, Sudan and South Sudan were one country. And later, I think in 2011, it was divided and they became two independent countries. So it is followed by Saudi Arabia and Uganda, Chad, and other countries. So most of it is their neighboring countries. You find the diaspora of Sudan in their own neighboring countries. And how are these Sudanese diaspora engaging with their own country, and how is the Sudan government actually managing the diaspora? Sudan lacked the policies necessary to capitalize on its diaspora engagement in earlier times. But however, in the recent past, the cabinet is developing policies to maximize its diaspora engagement. Now, the Sudanese diaspora has a political rights of dual citizenship and can vote in national elections. Studies on Sudanese remittances have found an increase in formal remittances. Remittances peaked in 2013 at USD 3.3 billion and settled at USD 2.9 billion for 2018 and 19. So it's been a good increase in recent times. And Sudan is managing its diaspora engagement in a positive way. Diaspora engagement mapping Sudan, the reports which can download from the internet, and the potential of Sudanese diaspora remittance. These are the two references you can use it. See, it's very interesting. Even I was trying to look at a lot of references. There was not much work on these countries, which only says that there's a lot of potential for students, or especially for the new students, emerging students, diaspora students like you, to take up new work and work on these countries. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a material you can work, because there is not much work done on these countries. So it's a good, actually, and if you are interested, if you take up, it will be a very good work, and it will be also be a reference for the future students who are interested in it. So this completes all the 4 countries, students. So we'll just try to make conclusions before you open up for discussions. So we discussed 4 countries: Kenya, Tanzania, Sudan, which constitutes the main Eastern African region, and Ethiopia, which constitutes the Horn of Africa. And we understood that the region of East Africa is not uniform, and so is their diaspora. The region is politically, culturally, ethnically, geographically, and linguistically divided. So it's not just politically these regions are divided, but even culturally, ethnically, geographically, and linguistically, it's divided. I somewhere read that, the Horn of Africa, there are at least 130 languages spoken in Horn of Africa, and almost 90 languages, roughly approximately 90 languages are spoken in Ethiopia alone. So that is the beauty of the cultural and ethnicity, and how rich in terms of ethnicity this region is divided into. And each region have their own reasons for why people are migrating from their countries. And each region have their own policies and laws to reach out to their diasporas. And each one is unique in their own way. That's the reason why they differ is because the cultural history, political history is different. And accordingly, they have their own ways to manage the people who have migrated, to manage their own diaspora. Kenya, for example, has a variety of factors that has influenced out migration. We discussed that how large number of migrants of Kenya have migrated due to high unemployment in the country. And for Tanzania, the reasons were different. The early migration was a result of slavery and forced labor. And however, in the later part, it was because of unemployment and other reasons. And migration from Ethiopia was largely due to conflict. And the diaspora which is now generated, which is resulted, is largely because of the conflict which has taken place in that region. So by and large, rising conflict, poverty, political crisis, unemployment, and globalization have been the key reasons for the migration from the East African countries. Overseas employment opportunities, higher education also has served as a pull factors for the diaspora in the recent past. So different East African countries have been engaging their diaspora population differently through policies and programs. Some countries of East African region are providing dual citizenships. Some are engaging their diaspora in national politics by giving them right to vote in elections. Some countries are encouraging their diaspora for brain gain and transfer of knowledge and skills. So by and large, they have their own unique ways and in their own good intentions, the best way possible, they're engaging the diaspora. The diaspora of East African countries are encouraged to make the investments in their home and country's infrastructure, health and education sector, etc. So shortly, I'll be showing a video on Kenya, how the Kenyan diaspora is investing in Kenya. And in addition to it, there are a lot of international organizations like IOM and UNDP who are closely working with many of these East African countries to encourage this diaspora engagement and development. So basically, they're positively helping these countries to deal with their diaspora and see that how the diaspora's contribution can be converted, can be used for the development work for their own homelands. But it should be noted that the political crisis and the conflicts in many of these Eastern African countries are unfavorable for the development of the region. Despite the huge contributions made by the diaspora, the development of these regions had not made progress for a considerably longer time. So the most of the diaspora would feel, where is that money they have been investing in going? It's like almost like a black pot going every time they're contributing, and nothing, no development is visible. That's largely because of the political crisis and conflict that would frequently take place in the region. But in the recent times, the diaspora is feeling that their contributions, the remittances is showing results in the recent past, because everything is organized in these countries. At least some of these countries like Kenya, the financial institutions are more organized and they're channelizing the diaspora contribution in a positive way. In addition to this political crisis and conflicts, unemployment and poverty is continuing to push a lot of population from this region to other countries in form of refugees. So the biggest challenge these East African countries are facing is illegal migration, which they are not able to handle and they're still finding it difficulty. And in order to escape from hunger, famine, violence in their own countries, these hundreds of people are dying while they're entering another country's political border. See, for instance, the recent in the news, because of the Ukrainian war, Ukrainian-Russian crisis, it impacted many countries and it largely impacted the economy of these East African countries and especially the Somalia. More than 50% of the Somalian population had to really suffer from hunger because of the sudden price rise. And in order to escape from this price rise, and they moved to the neighboring countries, thinking that there it was a better opportunity for them work, and there was more possibilities for them to escape from hunger, and there was employment opportunities, and they all fled to the neighboring countries. And it's not just a story of the current times. Even earlier, there was continuous movement of these people from their own countries to the neighboring countries, thinking that things are better there. Either they would move because they wanted to escape from hunger, or due to ethnic conflict, or the violence, or the terrorism also is very much inbuilt, very much severe in these places, or sometimes due to famine. And in the process, when these migrants were crossing the borders, they get trafficked and exploited. And many such trafficked people remain invisible and undocumented for their entire lives. This is actually a fact and the reality. Lot of East African population, when in the process of migration, they have been trafficked and mercilessly exploited. And nobody has a document about it. They remain invisible and undocumented, and they remain undocumented for their entire lives. And the recent past, the return migration and the generating employment for returning migrants appear to be another major challenge for Eastern African countries. This is especially, this is a new scenario which is developed in East African regions. That is after COVID era, most of this East African diaspora, some of them actually returned back to their own countries. After they returned back, the country is not able to provide employment for them. That is also a challenge for them. In the even more recent challenge was this Ukrainian crisis, which has further created hunger issues and a lot of hunger hotspots in Somalia and other countries. So this was in a broad nutshell about the summing up of the current situation about the East African countries and the summing up besides their history of migration and diaspora. If you're interested in additional references, just go through this study of East African slave trade in Bagamaya. It might give a huge insights about what happened during the slave trade, during the slave trade period. And the human trafficking, which is not much talked about because not much news is really out in the world, but there's some work done in terms of report, which could be of useful to you. Human trafficking in Eastern African. And is also potential area to work, those who are interested in it. And 5 facts about the global Somalia diaspora. All these references are available on the internet. If you are interested, you can go through. So, dear students, this was in a nutshell about these 4 countries. And whatever you say, we can open to questions, or we can also quickly go finish that video I wanted to show. What do you suggest?
Yeah, ma'am, we can see the video.
Okay, thank you. I'll just play the video. Okay, let me explain you. This is a story, this is a video which explains how diaspora in Kenya are investing. So the few things have, how Kenya in diaspora of Kenya are investing in Kenya. So some few things have become very, very organized now. That is financial institutions like cooperative banks and other machineries, which has actually positively making this diaspora investment functional, and some signs of development are showing up. So this is just a brief video which shows about it. Also tells about how this diaspora, Kenyan diaspora, was disappointed earlier that there was no visibility of any development in their homeland, but now there is an huge change. So just see.
Inflows to Kenya have increased tenfold in the last 15 years.
Is it sound audible for all of you?
Yes, ma'am, audible.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
3,718 million US dollars in 2021, according to Central Bank of Kenya. This is the equivalent of over 456 billion Kenya shillings. Statistics further indicate that the bulk of the cash goes towards consumption and basic needs. In the past, Kenyans abroad have feared to invest back home because some have lost their cash channeled through relatives, friends, or unscrupulous institutions. Joy Wanjiru Sens, the founder of a welfare association known as African Women in Europe, says this has been a major factor discouraging Kenyans from investing back home.
We have been sending a lot of money here in Africa, in Kenya, and we have a feeling it's a big pot with a hole that never fills up. Some of us come back home and find nothing. So how can we change that to generation wealth?
However, confidence among Kenyans abroad to invest back home is growing thanks to the coming up of credible investment partners like commercial banks. The Kenyan members of the African Women in Europe have joined hands to form a circle, and Cooperative Bank is its banking partner.
It's a channel to invest with entrepreneurs. We Diaspora invest in terms of saving our money here through SACCO, and from the SACCOs, what happened is that we have entrepreneurs coming in from Kenya and they borrow loans where we give them to grow their businesses. The Cooperative Bank is our bank holding the SACCO. We invest, put our money with them. That's where we channel our money. And they have been a great partner in terms of guiding and also together with the institution itself, the cooperative.
According to Pauline Kieme, the head of Diaspora Banking and Remittances at Cooperative Bank of Kenya, the department's challenge is to get a better understanding of the people of East and Central Africa living abroad, promote access to their remittances across the region, link these remittances to financial solutions, and develop innovative investment opportunities for these migrants and recipients.
We serve Kenyans who reside in different parts of the world. As long as they are Kenyan and they are out there, we have financial solutions. We want to encourage them to invest back home. I know Kenyans work hard all over the world, and we want to support them by offering them financial solutions and services. So we start with a typical account. We are able to open for them accounts, and this we do in different currencies. We have a wide range of accounts, starting from individual accounts. We offer group accounts. We also bank SACCOs. We have SACCO accounts and children accounts in the name of Jumbo Junior accounts.
Pauline, who is a diaspora returnee who has lived and studied in the UK and USA, says Cooperative Bank works with its clients to avail tailor-made solutions to their needs.
We open accounts for you, and then we offer you investment solutions. So you're a Kenyan out there, you want to save. We give you savings options, which are interest earning, and your money is able to work for you. If you want to buy shares in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, we facilitate that. You can also participate in the treasury bills and bonds, which we facilitate from here.
When it comes to remittance services, Cooperative Bank works with over 14 money transfer organizations.
And this is meant to provide our customers with diverse means of sending money back home. Anytime you send money, you have the option of sending money directly to a mobile phone or to a bank account, any bank account in Kenya, or oftentimes, if you wish, and if you're sending to someone in the village or even in any other town in Kenya, you can send them directly and they'll be able to visit a Cooperative Bank branch and be able to collect the money. Again, as Cooperative Bank, we endeavor to offer remittance services to every corner of the country.
Thomas Kamuyu Kamau is a Kenyan accountant living in Dubai. He also imports fresh produce from Kenya. He says the culture of what are known as chamas in Kenya is taking root abroad, with members looking for effective ways of channeling their money back home.
Given period of time, let's say like 8-7 months, and some of them will contribute very minimum amount, which is 200 dirham. That is 200 converting to Kenya shillings, roughly 6,000.
6,000 Kenya shillings.
Yeah, 6,000 per month.
Okay.
On which we are like 5 people. You contribute for a given period of time, then we have amount that you can gain to either the landowners and those who are holding land. Then you start paying. And the idea of paying slowly is also enabling Kenyans to own properties, to own what they never thought that they could own back home.
A lot of people out there are looking for properties to buy, and we have Property Hub where Kenyans can look. We verify these properties, so it helps the Kenyans abroad know that these properties are verified by the bank. And we go a step further in offering you access to finance to be able to acquire the properties that you see on the Property Hub. So talk to us today. We'll be happy to support.
Cooperative Bank has agents in various countries across the world who assist in account opening, among other services. Thomas is among them.
Through my assistance, they have been able to bank with Cooperative Bank, which enables them, with a simple touch of a phone, unaweza toa pesa from the Cooperative Bank account to your M-Pesa and pay for some either services, some goods. Yeah, and I'm also happy because this one enables us even to renew our driving license while you're still here. And the best thing about Cooperative Bank, with a simple touch of my card here, I can swipe with a Cooperative Bank account card. While abroad, I can swipe to any of the 18 branches within here, with the different banks, pay bills from here. I'll also transact a lot with a simple card as this one, the Cooperative Bank account.
So I've been here for 4 years, and it's good.
In the UK, Stock UK Diaspora Circle, yet another Kenyan Diaspora Circle banks with Cooperative Bank of Kenya.
Most of their banking services, they do it online. Online, which is great, especially we're not based in Kenya. Most of the stuff we do is digital. Apart from that, I think it's to do with the cost of providing the service. It's not very expensive. The service, the charge is not overly prohibitive as perhaps you'd expect from other banks. We chose CoBank because it's the main bank for most of the diaspora circles that we have, and also for the purpose of the efficiency services that they provide.
The US is Kenya's top source of remittance inflows, followed by Europe.
Currently, the trend we are observing is a lot of money is coming from the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia. Some time back, we used to believe that money would only come from, let's say, the US or Europe, but now we are seeing a different trend where money is coming from the Middle East. And we've partnered with the specific companies there, money transfer organizations, to offer our sisters and brothers who are living in the Middle East convenient means of sending money back to Kenya.
ACK is a cooperative bank agent based in Seattle City, Washington State, USA.
We are a registered agent with Coop Bank. So if someone doesn't have, let's say, for example, doesn't have a bank account, we help them by filling in the application, submitting them to the relevant department in diaspora banking, and they facilitate by helping them to open a bank account.
Nowadays, technology has made it very easy for people outside there to interact with the money transfer services. As we speak now, Kenyans and other people outside can jump onto their mobile applications or even go online to our website and key in a few information and be able to send money back home instantly. Equally, they'll be able to pay bills, let's say pay water bill or pay electricity bill or send money for a particular purpose using these services.
Cooperative Bank says it supports its diaspora customers to grow their wealth and also protect their wealth through its insurance products.
If you have a property in Kenya, we offer you domestic cover for that property. We also offer group insurance. We offer health insurance for families. You have a family member back home, a lot of money.
Yes, students, that was in brief about this one, about that how Kenya is investing their shares. If anyone of you have investing their money in Kenyan diaspora is investing their money in the Kenya. If anyone of you are interested in the questions, we can talk about it.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Ma'am, you used a term called circular migrants, right? While we are talking about Sudan diaspora.
Yes.
Recently, when there was the Sudan coup, the military coup which was going on, there was one Indian tribe called Haki Piki which was highlighted. So India even sent Operation Kaveri to Sudan, and most of the tribes were taken back to India. Can we call those tribes as Indian circular migrants, or can we address them as circular migrants from India?
Who is this? Shrestha, right?
Jai Renuka.
Yeah, Jai Renuka. Okay, fine. Jai Renuka, I'm not very sure we can address them as a circular migrant because they were Indians, right? Indians who had gone.
Yes,
right?
ma'am.
Yeah, but they had gone there for providing aid.
No, they were actually doing business there. They were selling this native forest products like birds or some forest products to Sudanese people.
Okay. let us get one thing clear. Technically, circular migration can be termed so if the migrant is frequently traveling between the host and the home country, where these so-called people you pointed out, were they frequent migrants, frequent traveling for the purpose of business or employment reasons. But it's not just they go and they are there they have settled there for a long time. If they're frequently traveling for a period of time, then they can be termed. So you can find out the solution yourself. Because I don't have the data. Were they really frequently traveling?
It was said that these people, they used to travel more to the African countries, especially the East African countries, to sell the products.
Yeah,
so
based on the, maybe I think based on the
comes
data, if you get the data correct, like if you look at the data and if the pattern shows that they were frequently migrating, then probably we can call them as a circular migrant. This partially circulatory migration was taking place, depending upon the data.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Any more questions? I hope all of you enjoyed and thank you for listening patiently to it. So,
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
any more
ma'am,
discussions?
Thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful session. It was very informative.
Yeah, it's been nice. Like I've been interacting with you for at least two, three sessions. It's nice. Very like some of the questions all of you raise are good. But please, I would like to close this session by highlighting just a couple of things. My reading about the East African and I've also done on Africa. Africans work have possibilities to take up work on these countries. So if you're interested, you pick up any one of these countries, in this context, East African countries, and you go in detail about it. Probably you can do your short thesis work or also PhD work. It has an huge possibility and huge future. I see a comment here. South Sudan also there is ethnic conflict. Yes. Yeah, you might have listened to this term called genocide. Genocide, right? Genocide is where is basically you kill people, deliberate killing of people of particular ethnicity and particular nation with the intention of actually trying to destroy them completely without any having trace of them. So this genocide is frequently happening in East African countries, in Sudan, where the Kangat is mentioning. The recent genocide, the news came out from Ethiopia. I think I just wrote down Ethiopian Tigray crisis. That is also genocide, which a major civilian war broke out in Ethiopia in 2021, not very far. So many of this genocide and issues related to terrorism and attacks are happening, ethnic conflicts are happening amongst them, which most of the times the news is not out. But only some of the news come out, and at least we are picking up on that. And another reason I found in terms of reference, you try to capture the reference even from these the local papers, local media, the news media. That also gives you some insight than going for only academic writer, because there's very few academic work done on these East African countries. In fact, you should take it up and do further work. So thank you. If I have no more questions and no more comments or observations, we can call off the air.
Thank you, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, it was very helpful because I am also working on Tanzania.
Yeah, you're Tanzania. You're working on Tanzania.
Yes,
okay.
Ma'am, my research title is The Role of Indian Diaspora and Tanzanian Politics Since Independence.
Oh, very good. That's awesome. That's nice. That's I think you can use that few references we showed that actually it's there in your notes, but I still felt that those references were not enough. If we come across any references, I will pass to you. So there's an email ID I posted And if anybody is interested in the slide file, if you want to have any information or questions, please reach out to me. I will definitely respond back to you. Okay. Thank you all, everyone. Wish you all a happy weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you all.